So today we're going to do the handover video on this 2023 Laika Kosmo 512. We're going to start on the outside and then we're going to move on to the inside. I'd like to start the video to explain that the vehicle hasn't yet had a valet. I just want to get this video completed and out to you just before you come to collect. So if you can look past any dirt that's on the vehicle, it'll all be spick and span for when you collect. But if you can just look past that, that'd be much appreciated. So firstly, we're going to go over to the passenger side. You'll notice on the passenger side, you've got your fill-up point, and in here, you've got your diesel, which is up at the top, and below you've got your AdBlue. The AdBlue has been topped up at factory. When that is running low, you'll have a warning symbol, which just pops up on the dash to indicate that you need to top that up. Opening up the passenger side door, you'll notice on the passenger door sill, you've got your tyre pressures, as well as your bonnet release catch, which is just here. I'll release that to undo the bonnet. Before I go underneath the bonnet, you'll notice this vehicle has got something called Remis cab blinds fitted. To operate these, all you'll need to do is simply pinch the little tab and pull out like so. Lead these from the bottom like so and let them connect up via the magnetic strip. You've got the same on the other window as well as the big window at the front, and again these just pinch, slide out, and using the magnetic strip they meet in the middle and connect into position. Now for your side windows, when you're taking these blinds back, I recommend pulling and leading from the bottom. If you lead from the top, they can get caught and twisted. So lead from the bottom just like so, line it back up and slot it in so it's in position. Moving around to the front of the motorhome, underneath the bonnet, the main things that you need to know under here is if you're ever going to jump start the motorhome. If you are, your negative terminal is just located here, as indicated by the sticker above, and your positive terminal is just located here, as you can see on this tab here. There is a cap that shows a plus sign to indicate that that is the positive, so just flick that cap up and connect onto the tab. So that's if you're jump starting the vehicle. A couple more things just to point out whilst the bonnet is open. You've got your engine oil here, you've then got your brake disc fluid above that, with your engine coolant next to that, and then right in the corner, as you can see, you've got your washer fluid for the front windscreen. Moving to the side of the motorhome, you'll notice this vehicle has got an awning fitted. This is a Fiamma F45S awning. Now I'm going to send you a separate video showing you how to operate the awning, but two things to bear in mind. If it is a windy day, it's quite windy today, I'd recommend taking the awning in. You shouldn't really use the awning during wind, because as you can imagine, if you do get a little bit of wind underneath it, it could potentially tear the awning from the side of the van, damaging your van and also others on the campsite. So if it's windy, take it back in. Same goes for when you're using the vehicle at night. Take the awning back in at night, because you never know whether you're going to get a sudden gust of wind. And then secondly, if it is raining, I'd recommend taking the awning in. If the awning is left out in rain, you will at some point need to dry it. You don't want to leave it in wet, because after a long period it will then begin to rot the awning. So just bear that in mind. Coming to the side, you'll notice that you've got your habitation door here. We'll jump on to the inside, as I mentioned before, once we've done the outside. And next to the habitation door, you've got your external gas point here. Now, of course, you'll need your gas on for this to operate. And once your gas is turned on, all you'll need to do is get a little nozzle, which will clip into the end of here. Once this rubber gasket has been removed, that will then link up to your gas barbecue, and then using the red valve on there, turn that will release the gas and allow you to use your external barbecue point. Next to the door, you've then got your Dometic fridge vents. You can buy fridge covers for these for when you're storing the vehicle in the colder months. They just store behind, so you remove the vents by pulling it and they just slot in underneath. And with your fridge vents, obviously this is where the fridge pulls all of its air from to cool the fridge. So if it is a hot day, I'd recommend keeping this area under shade, so perhaps pull the awning out or turn the vehicle around away from the sun. That will just allow the fridge to run a little bit more efficiently. Moving on to the back, in this model you've got a fantastic garage. I'll open that up for you now. And with your garage door open, you can see it gives you ample space to store anything you need to. In here, as indicated by the sticker, it advises that you can only store up to 150 kg as a maximum in terms of weight in here. You've got a little light as well that you can turn on to help you at night, and underneath here you've also got a 230 volt 3-pin plug. Please bear in mind you will need to be plugged into electric for any of your sockets, including this one, to operate. In the back here we've also got tie down points which you can actually unscrew, slide about the vehicle and pop them on the other side. So then if you've got bikes in here, tie them down with bungee cord. And then in the back we've got your passenger seats which just slot into the back, which I'll show you how they operate later. You've also got your awning winder, as you can see, an awning strut as well to steady the centre of the awning, and then you've also got your cab carpets which are just in a sealed bag at the moment. With this vehicle, this has got something called a height adjustable bed. Now there'll be a lever somewhere which is in the garage, it's probably just underneath here, and that actually just connects onto here, onto this little metal piece here. That slots into there, and then you can wind the bed up or down, depending on how big you want the garage and how high you want the bed. All you've got to do is make sure that the area is clear and then begin winding it, wind it up or down like I mentioned. Now, if you are winding it all the way down, of course this will come down to this level here, to this stop block. Once it's all the way down, you'll actually be able to see into the bedroom area, and when you're in the bedroom you'll be able to see in the garage. So to avoid that, you've got a little clip up here that you can turn, that then slots down. Oh, there's your winder, and you can see that just connects in via the magnetic strip, and that will just stop you from having to look into the garage. Makes it look a little bit nicer. The same thing is on the other side. And like I mentioned, that is the pole that connects to that here to allow you to wind it up or down. Now in the centre, just underneath here in this cutout, brings us on to your first drain down point in the vehicle. Now you've got 3 main drain down points in the motorhome. You've got your freshwater drain down point, which is actually this that I'm about to show you. You've then got your wastewater drain down point, which is located and underslung on the outside of the vehicle. And then you've got your boiler drain down point, which is located on the inside of the vehicle, like your freshwater tank. It's really important that you ensure that the vehicle is always drained down when you're not using it. In the warm months it doesn't matter as much, but especially in the colder months you need to ensure that is always drained down. Because if you leave water in the vehicle over the colder periods, it could potentially freeze and would then lead to crack your system and obviously lead to a leak. So please ensure that the vehicle is always drained down when you're not using it in the colder months. I typically recommend draining it down whenever you're not using it. It just gets you into the habit of having them drained down. So to drain down firstly your fresh water, I'm just hopping the garage now. So as you can see, we're in the garage now. So to drain this down, you've got a little sticker here. This tank holds about 120 litres of fresh water, so quite a bit of water. If you lift this panel up, it will gain you access, as you can see, to the fresh water tank. Firstly, you've got a red cap there, which you can remove. If you're wanting to, you can actually you can clean the inside of the tank should you need to. Now, you don't really need to clean it that often because, as you can imagine, this is only all this is just fresh water, so there's nothing going to be harmful in there. But you can clean it out. You can pop your purifying tablets in there to purify it. I wouldn't recommend drinking out of it, and for that reason you don't really need to clean it that often, maybe once a year maximum. Now to actually drain down the tank, you'll notice that you've got this black knob here. Now if I just flip this back down, it shows you that black knob just on here. There's a couple of options that you've got with this. So this is built, the way that this is designed is that you can turn this knob and you've got 2 settings with it. So you can either turn it to setting 1, and there's a little lug that you can feel when you're turning this, and when you turn it to that lug, that will allow you to drain the entire tank down to 20 litres. So it will drain 100 litres of water. That's designed for a quick drain down point. So for example, if you are travelling off site, you're not using the vehicle anymore, but you want to keep a little bit of water in, perhaps if you're going to your next campsite or you want to make your brew on a brew on the way, you can leave 20 litres in the water tank. If you want to drain down the entire thing, you just keep turning this valve all the way past there. You'll hear a little click, and that will indicate that you've then gone past that point, and it will drain down the entire 120 litres. So that's designed for when you're not using the vehicle whatsoever and you're putting it in storage. But then, as I say, if you are travelling with water, the manufacturer recommends you travel with a maximum of 20 litres. The reason for that is primarily due to your payload, but also weight distribution in the vehicle, because it's obviously going to be quite heavy once you've got a lot of water in here, so just bear that in mind. But it's just done on that dial, just like that. To seal it up, like I'm doing now, just turn it like that. I don't know whether you actually heard that click then. I don't know whether you can hear that on the video, but there is a little click. You can actually feel it when you're turning the valve, and that is that stop point. And if you drain past that, it's draining the entire thing out. Now when you're on the campsite, there'll be a big grid that you can drive over, line yourself up with it and drain the majority of the water out. That goes for all your drain down points, and what I would recommend with all your drain down points is if you're draining everything down, once you drain the majority of your water on site, you can leave all of your tanks open, because as you're travelling, the vibrations of the road will just ensure that all that residual water makes its way out, and it just again ensures that there's no bits of water that are remaining in the tank that could potentially freeze. So coming out of the garage, moving on to the back, you can see you've got a reversing camera right up at the top there. I'll give you a nice view when you're reversing the vehicle of the rear bumper. And on the other side, you've also got another large garage door opening, again if you're loading bikes in or anything like that. Next to the garage door, you've got an external flap. This is for your fresh water. It's just popped out there, but to fill this up, all you've got to do is use a food grade hose pipe, remove the cap, and then just pop your food grade hose pipe in there and fill the fresh water up. You know it's full when it's overflowing. It's as simple as that, and once you've done that, you can then pop that back into there, tighten it into position, and then there's a little lock on there to stop anyone from opening it. So once that's filled up, you're then good to go. You can then move on to your pitch and use your appliances and prime your pump and everything like that. Now below your fill up point for your fresh water is actually where your gas locker is located. I've just opened the locker now. You can see in here, you just open the locker, you then fold down this metal bar here, or metal strip, and then you can pop your gas bottles in here. This will take two 11 kg gas bottles. You can see it comes supplied with a pigtail, which will then connect onto your bottle, and you can see that there's a regulator just up there which is already connected. That just connects onto your regulator, and this then feeds into your bottle. You've got your tie down points here to tie your bottles into position for when you're travelling, and then you're good to go. Now please bear in mind that when you're travelling, you should never have your gas on. You should always turn it off, as indicated by the sticker here. You should only turn your gas on when you're stationary, because as you can imagine, if you're travelling and you're involved in a crash, it is highly flammable, so it's quite dangerous. So when you're travelling, turn it off. When you're on site, you can turn it on and you can use your appliances throughout the motorhome. So next up, you've then got your hookup cable which goes into the vehicle. This will supply the vehicle with 230 volt electric, and as I mentioned previously, that will then allow you to use anything on the inside in terms of 3-pin sockets or anything like that. It will charge your leisure battery up and give you the capability of using your 3-pin sockets. So just hook up into there. Next up, you've then got a cassette locker, and just like that, with that open, gains you access to your cassette. Now before removing the cassette, you've got something called a blade. The blade is actually located on the toilet, and I'll show you where that is when we move on to the inside of the vehicle. Please ensure that the blade on the toilet is closed. I'll show you how you can do that, like I say, but always ensure that that is closed before removing the cassette, because if that is open, you go to remove the cassette and then this gets jammed. What can happen is if you force that, you'll break the float on the inside and the mechanism, and you'll need a new cassette. So please ensure that the blade on the toilet is closed before removing that cassette. Providing you've done that, you can then lift this up and slide it out towards you, just like so. Once the cassette is pulled out, all you've got to do is flip out your funnel like so, remove the grey cap on the outside of the funnel, and then click the orange button at the back. That will release an internal vacuum which will allow you to empty all the contents of the cassette nice and easily. Again, there'll be a grid on site that you just need to go to, just empty that and then you're away. If you're using blue fluid, that blue fluid can go in the top of this cap. There's actually a little measurement in there which indicates how much you need to put in, so just slot that in and then you're away. Finally, you'll also notice that you've got this orange dial here. This actually turns. This makes contact with the blade that I mentioned and will allow you to open and close the blade. This should always stay in this position again, because if that is off slightly and you go to pop the cassette back in, it will then get jammed. So always ensure that that is in that position. If it came out like that, make sure it goes back in like that. And once you've done that, once you've cleaned it, you put your blue fluids back in and the cap's back on. Lift the cassette back up and then just slide it into position like so until the handle here, this orange handle, just clips back into position, and you can see that's nice and steady now. That's not going anywhere for when you're travelling. Next up, you've then got an external vent here. You've got the same as well on this side that says Truma. It says hot this. Obviously this is basically the vehicle's chimney, can get quite hot, so just keep these areas relatively clear. And then the final thing on this side before we move on to the inside of the vehicle is your wastewater drain down. Well, as I mentioned, you've got one in your two in the inside of the vehicle, which is your fresh, which we've been through, and your boiler, and then this is the only one that is external, which is for your waste. You can see you've got a little metal bar here. Now somewhere in the vehicle you've got a little plastic handle that connects onto there, and then you can turn that handle down and that will allow you to empty the contents of the wastewater. Again, when you're on site there'll be a big grid. You can drive over that and drain that down. It's dead easy, dead simple. So that concludes the outside of the motorhome. We're now about to jump onto the inside. Okie dokie, so we're now on the inside of the motorhome. As you walk through the habitation door, on the left of you, you've got your control panel. Up here, you've got your main green isolator button. If I hold that, that will turn everything off in the motorhome. Just like so. So it turns all your lights off, turns everything off. Click that back on to obviously activate everything. Next to that, you've then got your main button for your lights on the inside of the van. Of course, you can turn off your individual lights through the little switches throughout the motorhome. But if you want to turn them all off, you just click that button there. Next to that is your pump button, so you can click that to turn your pump on. Now, to turn your pump on, before you do so, please ensure that you've got water in the motorhome. If you've no water in, do not run your pump, because if you do, after a period of time, it will just burn the pump out. So just make sure that the pump is only on when you're filled up with water. So when you're on site and you're filled up with your water and you move on to your pitch, click your pump on. Obviously ensure that all your drain down points are then sealed so you can use them. Go to all of your taps, including your shower, and then turn them on and turn them to hot. What that will do is it will pull fresh water from the freshwater tank into the boiler and then out of the tap. When it's running steadily, you prime your system for your hot water. It will spurt and splutter at first, but then when it's running steadily, you prime your system for your hot water. Once you've done that, flick it over to cold, do the exact same thing. Again, it will spurt and splutter, and then eventually it will run steadily. And once you've done that, you've primed your system. Do that for all of your taps, including your shower. Just bear in mind, when you are doing it on the hot, it will take a little bit longer. It will take about 5-10 minutes or so just to fully prime, because naturally it's pulling your fresh water from your freshwater tank into the boiler, which is then priming the boiler and then out to your tap. So it will take a bit longer on the hot water. But I'd recommend doing that as soon as you get in, because as soon as you're on your campsite and you do that, that will then allow you to turn your heating on and get that water up to temperature eventually. So then by the time you've got everything sorted in the van, that water will be nice and warm, because it does take about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on what fuel you're using to heat that water up. So just bear that in mind. Now, once you've primed your system on all your taps, you can actually leave your tap, or your pump on rather. Because on each of your taps, you've got something called a micro switch, which will activate and deactivate the pump whenever you need it. The only time, of course, like I mentioned, you need to turn that pump off is when you've got no water in the motorhome. Now, coming back up to the control panel, you've then got little lights here. That is for your awning light or your door light. You've got a little door light out there, so you can turn that on and off through here. Underneath, these buttons here will then indicate the vehicle's levels. So you've firstly got your habitation battery level. If you hold that, press that in, that will show you the leisure battery level. You can see, because it's like a little motorhome in the back of a battery. So you can see we're not far off 100% there, because we are plugged in. And that will eventually hit 100%. As we are plugged in as well, you will notice that there's a green little light next to a little plug icon to indicate that that's been charged. Next to that, you've then got your vehicle battery level. Click that and that will show you your vehicle battery level. About 50% at the moment. It just needs a little bit of a run to get that back up to 100. And then finally, you've then got your freshwater level. click that, you can see we've got hardly anything in there at the moment. We've got pretty much nothing in there, so that's indicating that there's zero water in the fresh tank. And then in the waste tank, you will notice that you've got a little icon here. This indicates your waste. You've no button for that. That is just separate on here. You can see that's red when I click the fresh water, because again, that indicates that you've not got anything in it. It'll take a minute for that to show red, but once that loads up, that will flash red, just like it's done now, and that will indicate that you've not got anything in the wastewater as well. Finally, you've then got a little button here which alters the brightness of the screen, so if you're sleeping in the vehicle at night, you can actually dim this should you want to. And then directly next to that, you've then got your Truma heating control panel. To turn this on, just hold this will eventually turn on, and then everything, once you've greeted with this, everything below the line is what you want to select. Firstly, you've got your vehicle's temperature. You can go all the way to 30 degrees should you want to with this. You've then got your water temperature, so you can either have that on Eco, Hot or Boost. Eco is approximately 40 degrees, Hot is approximately 70 degrees, and Boost will concentrate on, rather than heating the vehicle itself, it will concentrate on heating the water. Next up, you've then got your fuel, so you can select which fuel you want in the vehicle. So you can either run the heating system off gas, Mix 1, which is a mixture of gas and 1 kilowatt electric, Mix 2, which is a mixture of gas and 2 kilowatt electric, EL1, which is purely 1 kilowatt electric, or EL2, which is purely 2 kilowatt electric. If you're on site, 9 times out of 10 you'll run it off EL2, but if you're not supplied with anything, if you're wild camping, you'll of course run it off your gas. The time you'll run it off a mixture is if, for example, you just feel like the electric needs a little bit of a help just to get it up to temperature, so you can stick it on Mix 2 or Mix 1, depending on what your preference is. Bear in mind as well is if you are forced to put this onto EL1, say for example the campsite that you're on doesn't provide you with enough power, it's going to struggle trying to heat a vehicle of this size as well as the water on only 1 kilowatt electric. So I'd personally recommend just sticking it purely on gas. Then going back up to this, you've then got your fan. So at the moment, because we've not got anything selected, it's only given the option of vent, which will recirculate the air in the motorhome. If I'd selected one of these fuels, it will and a temperature, the vehicle's temperature rather, it will give me the option of Eco, which will turn the fan on and turn the heater on, or it will give me the option of Hot, and that would just be a more intensified version of the fan. Underneath, you've then got a little timer that you can set. So if you're out and about and you want the vehicle's heating to come on whilst you're out, you can set that. You've then got the clock, so you can change the time on here. And then finally, you've got a little settings panel. The main thing that you need to know in the settings is the reset button. To reset it, just click reset. It'll say preset, click that again, and that will then reset the system. Now, the times that you'll need to reset this is, for example, if you get an error code. Now, you often get an error code if you have selected the wrong fuel. So, for example, I've no gas in the vehicle at the moment. If I was to turn the heating on and to try and run this boiler using gas, something that I haven't got, I'll get an error code. Because, like I say, your boiler is then trying to heat with something that it's just not got. So, to protect itself, it will shut itself down and it will give you an error code. If you get an error code, all you'll need to do is just go into the panel, reset it as I've just told you. Now the screen will flicker, and after about 20 seconds, it will look like it's back on. It'll look like that, and you think, oh perfect, it's sorted. But you do need to wait a full 20 minutes for that to completely reset. Although it comes back on and it looks fine, you do need to wait a little bit longer just to ensure that everything is reset fully. So just always ensure, if you can, that you've got the correct fuel. Another thing as well to remember is always turn this panel off, and you do that just by holding this button in. Eventually it will say off, there you are, before you remove the fuel from it. So for example, if I'm getting packed up now, I'm moving everything off site, instead of, and I was running this off electric, instead of just unhooking the electric cable, don't do that because you'll get an error code, because in essence you're taking the fuel away. Turn this off first and then remove the external 230 volt. Because if you don't do that, when you come to use the vehicle next, you'll be met with an error code, you'll have to reset it, it's just a pain. So just bear that in mind. And like I mentioned when we were talking about priming your system for the water, I always recommend priming the system first, and then as soon as you prime your system on your hot water, turn your hot water on, because that will just then give it chance to heat that water up. So then by the time you've got everything sorted in the van, the water will be nice and up to temperature for you. Now turning it around and away from the control panel, you can see that you've got your lounge. This has got a bench seat lounge, and above that you've got your drop down bed. Now to drop down the bed, you've got a little button here which is just underneath your sink. Just click that, and as you can see, that will then drop the bed down. Now before you drop the bed, you need to ensure that obviously the area is naturally clear. Now all these beds have got a safety clip, so click that, unhook that, and then you can drop the bed all the way down. Now the bed will drop down to its lowest point and then stop automatically. To do that, again, I'll just demo, click that, and I'm going to hold that into position, and as you can see, that's just dropping all the way down. That has now stopped automatically, and your bed is then ready to use. You need some ladders up to it, and then you can leave all your bedding on here. What I'd recommend is with your pillows, stick them at the front or store them elsewhere, but all your bedding can stay on. Now what can often happen with these beds is you blow a fuse, and that's the most that tends to go wrong with them. It's very rarely the motor. Now if it is the motor, you have got a manual override, which I'll show you in a second, but more often than not, it tends to be a fuse that you blow. The reason for that is you often, you know, customers tend to leave really big duvets on here, which when you take the bed up, it gets trapped up here. And because of the pressure, it will pop and blow a fuse because it's protecting the bed. So if that happens, all you need to do is replace your fuses. Now your fuses on the vehicle, I'll just take the bed back up, are actually located underneath the passenger seat. What I'd recommend is just take some spare fuses with you. Now they're just generic fuses, they're nothing, you know, special. They're nothing generic to a motorhome. Just take some spare fuses from Halfords, so then if you do run into that issue, it's very easy to solve. And like I mentioned, the fuses are underneath the passenger seats, so just coming through, unhook this, and you can see in there is where all your fuses are. You've also got your CBE charger in there. Leave that as it is. That is for your leisure battery. Now, if the bed does fault and it doesn't end up being a fuse, which it often is, but if it's not, you'll notice that if you open this cupboard here, you've got a little manual override, little slots there. There's a little winder that goes into there. I can show you on collection. Slots into there, and then you can wind it up and down should you need to. And that's obviously worst case scenario if nothing else works. Now coming back down into the lounge area, obviously you've got your table here that operates just by sliding this out and opening up the table. And like I mentioned, in the garage you've actually got two seat bases, or seat backs rather, which actually slot in here, and they will allow you to use this as a 4-berth, or 4 travelling seats rather. So you'll have 2 at the back, 2 at the front rather, and then 2 at the back. You can see the seat belts are here. You can tuck them behind if you wanted to. But obviously, if you are using this as a 4 travelling seats, all you'll need to do, remove this seat base and seat back, take them out, store them in the garage if needs be, using this seat base that can then slot onto there, and then using this seat back, and then the seat back in the garage that slots in. That will provide you with a nice bit of cushion, and then you're good to go. I'll do that for you now. And you can see just like that, I've just removed the seat bases and the seat back. All you've got to do, you fold this up, just like that. You have got this little piece here that pulls across for when this is set up as a seat base, just to give it a little bit more rigidity. That can fold across to allow the passenger's legs just to sit into there. And then all you need to do is set it up as a seat, which I'll do for you now. So just like that, I've put the seat base onto here. The seat backrest is then slot into that position. You have got a little a grommet here where you can turn that. That will then anchor this into position so it's nice and steady. And then using the back of this base, that will then slot into there. And just like that, you can be belted in and you're ready to take your passenger. Now it's the same on this side here. All you've got to do, remove this. You've got the other seat base that slots into here. And then just remove that. And again, that folds back so then you can face forward. And then that's 2 back here and 2 back in the front. And then you can see, as easy as it was to set up, it's very easy to then get it back into your lounge, and then you're good to go. Now on the other side of the lounge, I've just taken off these seats just to show you and access the final drain down point in the vehicle, which is actually your boiler drain down point. So your boiler drain down point obviously drains the boiler, and again is located on the inside of the motorhome. So to drain this down, all you've got to do is this piece here. To drain it down, just simply turn that like so. You can actually hear it draining out at the moment. The diamond is pointing towards me. It's a little bit difficult to show on camera, but there's a black nib that's just popped up, and then the blue dial on the outside has popped out. That indicates that the boiler is being drained down, and then, like I mentioned, there's a big grid that you can drive over. Just drain that down on that grid and then leave that open. Always ensure that this is drained down when you're not using the motorhome. To seal this unit, all you've got to do is turn the diamond so it's facing across. The black nib on the inside of the diamond will pop down, and then press that blue dial in, like so it's flush, and that is the boiler sealed. Now this boiler, or this boiler drain down point, is actually a frost protection valve. Within that, you've got something called, it's like a solution basically, that reacts to temperature. So when it gets to a certain temperature, that will actually automatically trip, just like so, and it will automatically drain down. So if you forgot to drain down your boiler, it will react to temperature, and if it gets to a certain temperature, it will trip and it will drain down the tank for you, which is really, really good. However, I'd still recommend getting into the habit of draining it down, but it is a fail-safe just in case you do forget. So it's dead handy. Now, with that in mind, because this reacts to temperature, what can happen is if you've not used the vehicle in a while, or you're using the vehicle when it's a really cold climate, what can sometimes happen is you'll go to seal this unit, so you'll turn the diamond across, and then you'll go to press the blue button in, and it'll keep pinging out. The reason for that is reacted to temperature, like I say, and it will be in fear that basically it's so cold that potentially the water could freeze. So with that in mind, all you've got to do is turn your heating on. This is for the vehicle heating, not the water heating, of course, and then heat this area up. There's a load of pipes around there which will get that nice and warm. After about 30 minutes, that'll be nice and warm, the vehicle will be up to temperature. You can then click that blue button in, and that will allow you to seal it and get on with using the motorhome. So it's really clever. Now I'm going to leave this open for the time being, just so that drains down completely. So that concludes the lounge. Moving back, you've then got your kitchen area. We've spoken about priming your system. In here you've got your hob, which is 2 gas burners. Of course you need your gas on for that to operate. And underneath you've got your oven/grill. We've spoken about your bed, and you've also got a 230 volt electric point there. And you'll notice you've got a really good bit of storage here. In this vehicle you've got isolation valves, which are them grey taps there. That will allow you to isolate certain areas of the van. They're only for the technicians when working on the vehicle. I don't advise you use them. They're only for us when we are testing certain areas for gas leaks. You've got a cutlery drawer up here, and also a little bit more storage in the kitchen space. Moving to the other side, you've then got your fridge. It's a Thetford fridge. Opening this up, you've got your freezer at the top, and then your fridge, which is below. To turn your fridge on, all you've got to do is hold this button, and you can see just like that, it turns on and it's good to go. To select an option, hold the square button like so until it keeps flashing, and then flick between the options. You've got the option of auto, which I'm going to leave it on for the time being. I'm going to leave it for the temperature there, and then set it on. Now that automatic function will automatically assign whatever fuel it's got available to power the fridge. So it's dead easy, dead handy. I'd leave it on that if I was you. Now what you can do is you can select manually between the options, like I mentioned, just by holding that button and flicking through. There's 3 ways to power this fridge. You can either run it off 230 volt electric, which is currently what we're on. You can run it off gas for when you're wild camping, or you can run it off your 12 volt leisure battery for when you're travelling. Now, for your fuel, a lot of people get the wrong idea. So they think that they can run the fridge off the 12-volt leisure battery for when they're wild camping. However, that's not the case, because if it was, it would just take all the power from the leisure battery and just completely leave you with no power, because it does take quite a bit. So it will only allow you to run the fridge off your gas for when you're wild camping, and it will only allow you to run it off a leisure battery for when you're travelling. The reason for it is when you turn the ignition on, the vehicle battery will send power through the alternator, sending it to the leisure battery, which will then allow you to power your fridge, and then you're up and running and you're ready to go. Now, as I've shown you as well, you can change the temperature on here should you want to, and then to select that, just click that square button, and that will get everything sorted and you'll be good to go. Next up, we're moving backwards through the vehicle. You can see that you've got your shower, which is just in there. This is just on a magnetic, strip here, which will then just open. You've got a hanging rail in there should you need to, or hang any coats or anything wet in there. And as I say, we've spoken about priming the system for that. That just locks in like so. You've then got this door that pulls across, which gains you access to the toilet area. This actually pulls across all the way, just like so, and it's really useful that, because it obviously divides the space. In the back here, you've got two 30-volt socket as well as some lights. Your plug is in there as well. Now, with your cassette toilet, we've spoken obviously about emptying that. What I kept mentioning on the outside was the blade on the toilet. Now, the blade is this piece of plastic here. This piece of silver plastic allows you to open and close the blade. Now, at the moment, the blade is closed. Slide it across, and that is then open. So you open it for when you're using the cassette. Open it so all the waste can drop into the cassette, and then you click the blue button, which is just up there. That activates your flush, and that will flush the entire system. Once you've done that, pull the blade back towards you. That will close it. It will seal the unit, and then you're good to go. You seal it for two reasons. The main reason being is it stops any odours from escaping from the cassette, but also it does get you into the habit of having that closed, so when you come to remove the cassette, you don't run into the issues of it jamming. Now, as I mentioned, this blue button will activate your flush. Just bear in mind you will need your pump on for that to activate. And then moving on from the bathroom area, you've of course got your bedroom area. Now, as we say, this bed does move up and down. You can activate that and use that from the inside of the garage. Just before you step into the bedroom area, you've also got a little door here that slots open. This is great for a little bit of storage, but you will notice that you've got your RCD breaker there. So the vehicle ever trips, you can come to that point and sort it out. And then just in the back, you've got a really nice bit of storage along the top, along with some more hanging space either side of the bed. And finally, you'll notice that you've got this sliding door here that will slide across and butt up to that join there, again sealing the bedroom away from the rest of the vehicle. Now, that pretty much concludes everything in the motorhome. There may be some more specific items that you fitted to the vehicle, which I will happily show you on the day of collection. But just finally to conclude, obviously you've got skylights throughout the motorhome. To operate them, press that up, press that in, and then slide it back. I'll let that be sealed so no rain gets in. You've then got a blackout blind and a fly screen built into these. And the same goes for your side windows, blackout blinds and fly screens. To open these windows up, simply turn these latches and then press just out like that, and that will then open the windows. You can see you'll hear them clicks, they're little adjusters, so you can open the window in fragments and at certain angles, and then to bring it all the way back down, push it all the way up and drop it down like so. You can put these on venting, but please be aware that when you're travelling, these do need to be completely sealed. Same goes for, obviously, your skylights throughout the motorhome, so please ensure that everything's sealed before you're travelling off, and then you're good to go. Now, that concludes the handover video on this Laika Kosmo 512. I hope you enjoyed.